Hello, everybody. My name is Matthias Caldwell, and I am a career development specialist in the Career Center at Sacramento State University. And I'm here to talk to you today about skills in the workplace. So let's get started. So by the end of this presentation, we do have some learning objectives. Hopefully by the end, you'll have learned to differentiate different types of skills, such as transferable and in-demand skills, and be considering what employers are looking for. You're going to be able to hopefully discuss some steps you can take right now and after you graduate, start building those skill sets. And you're going to be able to locate some resources that are going to help you identify skills that are a necessity for specific industries and different occupations. So let's get started by talking about in-demand skills and transferable skill sets. So, of course, there is a lot of overlap between different types of skills. So not everything in these two lists is completely exclusive to the other. But for the sake of this presentation, just to kind of differentiate and help you understand, broadly speaking, what we're talking about, it's helpful to think of them as kind of completely different categories. So in-demand skills are often what we think about when we think of like soft skills, or some people call them power skills or durable skills, those people skills that are often kind of an umbrella overarching a lot of more specific skills that might fit within them. Whereas transferable skill sets are often, at least for the sake of this presentation that we're talking about today, we're really talking about hard skills, technical skill sets that you might gain from a specific environment or professional setting. So let's talk first about in-demand skills, or those soft skills that you've probably heard all about over the course of your life. So what are soft skills? What are in-demand skills? Well, there are, of course, many different types of in-demand skills. However, it can be helpful to focus in on some of the ones that employers are actually looking for. So this list right here is some of the top skills that employers are looking for across the nation from recent graduates. So the people that they're hiring fresh out of college. And this is a report from NACE, and so that's the National Association of Colleges and Employers. So their career readiness competencies, and they kind of survey employers nationwide to find out what they're looking for from recent graduates. And as you can see, there's a lot of different skills that are in demand for employers. They want people who can communicate and critical think and work as part of a team and collaborate. They want people who are used to working with a variety of people. They want people who are professional, who have some sort of digital fluency, have had some responsibility at some point as well. So you can see there's a lot of things that employers are looking for. And I think you can also see how some of these in-demand skills, these soft skills, are kind of umbrella terms, right? So communication, for example, there are many different types of communication, and some of those specific types of communication might fall into actually, a technical skill set, more of the transferable hard skills that we'll talk about later. Um, but I think you can get a sense of what it is that employers are looking for. And I think really what's important here is understanding that many of these skills that are in demand from employers are skills that you can gain both on the workforce, of course, but also in school, in your personal lives, in a variety of different ways. And so, whereas, those transferable skill sets, those hard technical skills, those are often gained in kind of professional settings. In-demand skills, those soft skills, can be acquired in professional settings, but they can also be acquired in a lot of informal settings as well. And we're going to talk more about what some of those settings are in a few slides. But why is it important to be thinking about this, right? I mean, yeah, it's good to know what the employers are looking for nationwide, but how does that really relate to you right now? Well, I think one thing to consider is just the fact that while employers are rating these, 8 to 10 skills as very high, very important for those, early talent hires that they're making out of college, they are not always rating those same hires on the same level of proficiency as importance. And what I mean by that is a great example right here is that our self-evaluation is when we're students is sometimes different than what a professional setting might evaluate us. What our supervisor might say about our same skill sets that we're professing to have. And so we can see right here, when we look at that communication, the number one skill that was, looked for by employers, we can see that, employers are rating students at under 50% in terms of being extremely proficient in their communication skills, whereas many students are rating themselves much higher. In this case, almost, that 80% mark in terms of being extremely proficient communicators. So what we're seeing here is a gap between employers and the students, or the recent graduates, I should say, that they're hiring. And so it's very important to, think critically and be introspective about ourselves, and figure out kind of really where we lie and what skills we might need to develop as we're in school and after we graduate, because we want to make sure that when we're approaching the workforce, we're able to participate and utilize those skills that employers are valuing to a high level. So on that note, there's a lot of ways that we can go about developing some of these skills, and building those capabilities, those capacities, so that when we enter the workforce, we're, prepared and ready, and we're going to be matching what employers are expecting of us. And so I think, like I mentioned, it's important to understand that in-demand skills are skill sets that you can develop in a variety of ways. Of course, you can develop them in professional settings. You work in an office, you have a part-time job at a restaurant, or at a warehouse, you name it, right? You're going to be developing, teamwork and collaboration skills. You're going to be developing professionalism. You're going to be working with a variety of people. You're going to be communicating with, people above you, people below you, in kind of the hierarchy of a workplace setting. So of course you're going to be developing those skills. Nevertheless, most students, many students, are, doing other things beyond working, or, finding internships. Of course, internships are a great place to be gaining some of these skills, and we recommend that you would, search out those opportunities, as they can often lead to full-time working positions. But students are often doing different things throughout their day, throughout their semester or year, when they're, in their university career, that can also contribute to skill building. And so, as we can see here, a lot of these, quote unquote, informal settings, sports and volunteer work, clubs and organizations, class projects, working with a faculty member on some sort of project or research, project, even family responsibilities, can be ways that you can develop some of these soft or in-demand skills. Think, for example, if you were, part of a club and you were in a leadership role, and maybe you helped to, run that organization on campus, you'd be developing those leadership skills that, employers are often looking for. Or, for example, you're doing volunteer work. Maybe you're getting a sense of working as a collaborative unit with a number of other volunteers to complete a common goal, right? There are ways that you can be gaining these in-demand skills, even outside of a work or a professional setting. Class projects, we often gloss over those, whether that's an individual or, a group project, are great ways to develop those in-demand soft skills. Think about when you write, an analytical paper or an essay for a class, you're utilizing the critical thinking skills that employers are looking for, right? Or when you participate in a group project, you're collaborating. Maybe you're taking on a leadership role there by organizing your team, and setting deadlines, and setting up the meetings that you're going to be utilizing to complete the work, right? So these are all ways that you can be developing these in-demand soft skills. And so really, we can't emphasize enough how important it is to get involved in some capacity or another. It's tempting to just focus only on whatever your classwork or your schoolwork is. I know many of you have very busy schedules and many many classes and a high class load, and so that can be hard. But as much as possible, you want to get involved, and you want to have different experiences that are going to be able to contribute toward your skill building. So let's just think about in-demand skills, just kind of a little thought experiment activity here, a mental activity. So right here we have a student assistant position, let's say the Career Center, for example. And let's say this is, a part-time job that someone is holding on campus while they're also going to school. So we have that position. Now we have different tasks that you might do as a student assistant in the Career Center. Maybe you're answering emails and phone calls and greeting people at the front desk, kind of a customer service role. Maybe you're creating, marketing and flyers and materials or updating social media accounts. Or if we're going to follow that kind of middle task, maybe you're working to coordinate an event with a team and communicating with different campus partners. And so those are some tasks that you might complete. And then let's think about the skills associated, some of the soft skills that are associated with those tasks. So if we take that middle task, coordinating events with a team and communicating with different campus partners, we can clearly see that there's skill building taking place where you're developing some of those in-demand soft skills. You're developing your interpersonal and communication skills like employers are looking for. You're, working as a unit, right? So you're developing teamwork and collaboration skills. Reaching out and corresponding in different ways with people on campus. Maybe you're developing some technology or digital knowledge skills as well. And so I think this is a great kind of, thought experiment on how to kind of break down maybe an experience you have, whether it's a job or a volunteer role or a club role, like I've mentioned, a class project, and think about the tasks and then think about the skill sets that are associated with those tasks. And it's going to help you as you're, thinking about how to talk about some of those experiences in, maybe the application process for a job or an internship, when you're building your resume or just having a conversation with someone during a networking event. So let's take a moment here. I mean, obviously, this is going to be easier to do if I was in person presenting to you instead of a recording. But I think it's still a useful, mental activity. So I'm going to just give you a minute or two to kind of think about this. I want you to think of a position or a role that you've held. Spend a couple moments doing that. Once you have that, please think about maybe some tasks that are associated with that role, and then start thinking about some of the in-demand or soft skills that might be associated with those tasks. And it doesn't have to take too long to do this, but I just want to get you thinking about this so that's easier to have this conversation both with yourself and with others when the time comes. So we're going to take a minute or two to do this right now in silence. Okay, let's wrap up those thoughts. You can keep, writing some final notes if you want, but hopefully that was a useful mental activity just to get you thinking about how to break down positions or experiences or roles you might have had, tasks, and then connecting those tasks to specific in-demand and soft skills that employers are looking for. And we're going to move on now to the transferable skills or hard skill sets, those technical skill sets that I was introducing at the beginning of this presentation as well. All right, so transferable skills or skill sets. What are they? Well, transferable skills, like I said, at least for the purpose of this presentation, as we're trying to differentiate and really wrap our brains around the different types of skills out there, it's helpful to think of them as skill sets that can be applied to a professional endeavor, or maybe skills that are specific to a professional setting. They're often hard skills, they're specific knowledge, specific competencies. They might be specific technical abilities that are really specific to that one industry, and they might relate to other industries that are very, very similar, but might not translate to a completely different industry as well. So they really are important because they are reflective of your experience within either professional or at least semi-professional settings. They can, help demonstrate your experience, your ability to do a specific job. And they really are important because as you're, working from, applying maybe from one job into a new job, you may need to be talking about some of the, similar professional environments that you've worked in and how one job might connect to another. Of course, not every job is completely connected, but there are going to be some of those skill sets that are going to be able to transfer a little bit easier. And so just some examples to kind of go through and give you an example of what I mean, right? So, we talked about how communication is a top in-demand or soft skill. It's kind of that umbrella or overarching idea of a skill that employers are looking for. But as we can see here, this first bullet point, public speaking and presenting, that's a type of communication, right? It's a more specific type of communication, to a specific setting or, a specific type of experience. So just because you're a good communicator in different mediums doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be good at public speaking. You might be, right? But it's often public speaking is something that you probably develop by doing it specifically, right? So for example, I worked in college admissions recruitment for almost a decade. And during the peak season of busy parts of the year, I was giving between 3 to 6 presentations per day to anywhere between a couple of students to hundreds of students. And so I have a wealth of public speaking and presenting experience that I can draw upon. Where, if I were to apply to another job that required some kind of public speaking experience, I would be able to discuss or talk about that kind of technical skill set that I possess in a translatable way. Likewise, you might look at specific technology skills that you have as those kind of hard skill sets that are very important, right? So we saw that, technology skills were sort of the overarching in-demand skill that employers are looking for, but the specific types of technology skills that you might need in one job might be very different than another. If you need to be, let's just take coding, for example. If you're a computer science student, there's lots of different types of coding languages and programming languages, and those are very specific technical skill sets that would apply to one job versus maybe not as much to another. Customer service skills, that's kind of a subset of interpersonal skill sets that you might be developing. Budget management, right? That's a very specific type of skill that you have if you've had any kind of responsibility for the finances of an organization. So, for example, maybe you had one of those leadership roles in a club and you were the treasurer of a club on campus and you managed the budget. That is a very specific skill set that might help you as you're moving into a role that also requires some sort of financial responsibility. Patient intake, that bottom bullet point, right? Maybe you're a health science student that has, worked in some sort of clinic, for example, as at the front desk, right? That's also customer service skills, right? And you're developing interpersonal kind of overarching communication skills, but you also have a very specific technical skill set of being able to, intake patients into a clinical setting, right? So these are just some examples of, some of those hard or, technical skill sets, those transferable skill sets that are really important and specific to professional settings. Obviously, this list is not exhaustive in any way. There are so many different types of hard skills out there that you can gain in a variety of different professional settings. Where can you build these hard skill sets? We talked all about the informal ways you can develop those soft or in-demand skills, and you can still, develop some of these technical skill sets in those informal, capacities a little bit. But they're often gained more from professional settings. So you might be thinking about, gaining some of these skills by doing a part-time job on campus or a full-time job. Maybe you have a full-time job on nights and weekends while you're going to school. Internships. This is a really great way to gain, valuable professional experience and start developing some of those technical skill sets that are going to help you apply to the next job and then the next job, right? And it's even more important when you consider that many internship opportunities, when you get on as an intern, they can lead to full-time hires. It's not a guarantee, but it's still, I believe, over 50% lead to full-time positions. And so they can not only help you gain those technical skill sets, but they can also just simply convert into a full-time position. Not everybody can gain an internship. It's competitive out there. Jobs can be competitive, but there are things like micro internships or micro jobs, right? Things like the Parker Dewey link on our website. You feel free to book an appointment if you're not familiar with that and you want to kind of come in and get an idea of what some of these additional items are that I'm talking about. But micro opportunities are a great way for you to gain some technical skill sets in a very specific industry or a very specific role. They can be short-term kind of contract work that you can do sometimes remotely. Research assistant roles on campus, right? Maybe you have a faculty member that you've developed a good working relationship with, and you're kind of signed on to participate in something that they're doing in a research capacity. Those are some very specific skill sets that you might be gaining from that role. Individual projects and those leadership roles on campus, slightly more informal, but as I mentioned before, can still yield some very specific skill sets. Well, this is all well and good. You might be saying, okay, I understand there are all these skills out there that I need to gain, that I need to acquire, or that I can be acquiring right now while I'm in school. But you might be saying, well, what do I do if I'm about to graduate and I don't feel like I maybe have all the skill sets that I want? Well, don't worry. There's lots of jobs that you can get right after you graduate college that are kind of like transitionary jobs, right? They help facilitate that transitionary period between school and maybe like a longer term career. And I think the important thing to point out here is that you really don't need to tread water when you graduate. There are a lot of ways that you can develop yourself professionally and personally, build skill sets that are going to be relevant to you, in different professional settings down the road, but also still gain, quality experiences both in work and in life. Some of these transition experiences can gain skills and knowledge, but they can also help you have a good time and enjoy yourself. Some of them even maybe incorporate some travel components or provide inroads into various careers. And many of these transitionary jobs are also open to all majors, which I think is really, really important because let's be honest, some of us, get to the end of our 4 years and we feel pretty set that we picked the right major and that, we're excited about whatever that next step is in that industry. And others of us maybe got to the end of our, 4 years in college, 5 years in college and thought, I just need to finish this degree. I'm not sure if this is the industry or the career path that I'm going to go into, but I'm going to finish this degree and get it done. And then you're left kind of wondering, well, what's next? Well, a lot of these transition jobs are, these transitional opportunities are open to a variety of different majors. So again, not an exhaustive list, but just some more examples of what I'm talking about. Things like the Peace Corps, where you might go and do service for a year or two in a different part of the world. City Year or AmeriCorps, which is very similar but kind of more educational and focused within the United States. You might go and teach English abroad, gaining professional experience in that way and getting to travel a little bit. Like I said, I was a college admissions recruiter, and I did it for quite a long time, but certainly admissions work is another one of those great examples of transitionary jobs that people often move into after they graduate from college, right? Because you know all about the institution. You're able to effectively speak to, new prospective students. You get to travel. You get to develop a lot of professional skill sets that are going to be very relatable to other jobs down the road. Lots of SSP1 positions. Those are those staff service, student service positions here on campus. So maybe you're thinking, I might want to stay and work in higher education, whether that's at Sac State or somewhere else. Those entry-level university jobs are a great way to get your foot in the door professionally, kind of a transitional job, earn some money, and also develop skill sets that can translate elsewhere. And then, things like in the adventure and tourism world, right? Go work on a cruise ship for a year. Go be a tour guide in a different country. Like these are things that you can do that can absolutely earn you money, get you some translatable, experiences, help you develop particular skill sets, and yet are not necessarily expected to be a full-time long-term career. Now they might turn out to be something like that, but they don't have to be, right? And that's perfectly acceptable. And in fact, many of these professions, when you go into those professions, the expectation isn't that you'll be there for 10 years. Me working almost a decade in college admissions was maybe not the norm. A lot of people only work in that for a couple years and gain those translatable experiences and then transfer that experience somewhere else. Well, so you might be saying, okay, but that's great. You're talking about all these transitional jobs, but I have an industry in mind, right? I have somewhere I'm looking to go. I have a long-term goal. How do I figure out what are the translatable experiences or the translatable skill sets that are really important to my industry? What's important for my career path? Well, the good news is we have some tools on the website in the Career Center that are really useful for you to be able to explore career paths, explore specific job titles, and look at the skills and competencies that are required for those industries. So the first one of these is what the big arrow in the middle there is pointing at is labor market insights. And then we're also going to take a look a couple rows down at what can I do with this major. But labor market insights is a great tool that allows you to do kind of a deep dive on a specific job title. You can see some of these arrows that allow you to, filter. The yellow arrows pointing to important categories. You can type in a job. You can filter by industry. You can filter by maybe even region and figure out what a specific type of job looks like in California, or even all the way down to county level. Maybe you're like, I want to stay in Sacramento County. I want to know what this career path looks like in Sacramento County specifically. You can get all sorts of useful information about day to day, day in the life of kind of information about that job. Earning expectations. You can get information about, is it trending up or down in terms of as an in-demand job? Are they expecting, more positions like this to open up in the next 10 years or less? And then as you get toward, kind of the bottom of the labor market insights page, you'll begin to see specific skill sets and competencies that are associated with that job, that industry. And that's a great way for you to start thinking about, well, what are the skills that I need if I want to move into this career path, and maybe seeking out some opportunities to develop those skills. As I mentioned, what can I do with this major is also a great way for you to do some exploration about pathways, right? A little bit broader than labor market insights. This is now, the broad kind of career pathways that exist. But if you look at the bottom there, the strategies section of each major will have some really specific strategies and skills that you might need to acquire, additional education you might need to acquire that can help direct your steps and help you know maybe what your long-term goals should be if you're hoping to work in a specific industry, and some steps you can take to begin that process. All right, as we wrap up, I think it's important to just have some final thoughts here, things to consider. I think it's really important to stay open and stay flexible, right? So you can see that a lot of those, especially the in-demand, those soft skills that we were talking about at the beginning of this presentation, you're able to gain those skills and develop them in a lot of different ways, both formal but also in informal settings. And so it can be great to try new things, right? Join a club, join a sports team, maybe step up and say, yeah, I'll be the leader of this group project, and get some new experiences that are going to help you develop some of those kind of umbrella overarching skill sets that employers are looking for. Saying yes to new opportunities goes hand in hand with this, right? And this could be informal, but it could also be in a formal setting. Maybe you have a part-time job or a full-time job while you're going to school, and you are approached by a supervisor and they say, hey, do you want to learn how to do this new thing on the job? Somebody just left and we need somebody to kind of pick up the slack there. Now, it's easy to say no and be a little bit nervous about having to learn something new in the workplace, but it's a great opportunity to gain a new technical skill set, right, that might be translatable to the next job you apply to. In terms of reflection, I think it's really important to be thinking about your short-term versus your long-term goals. And keep in mind that it's okay if your short-term goals and your long-term goals are not necessarily in 100% perfect alignment, right? Now, of course, some long-term goals that you might have do require some short-term or near future actions, right? Like maybe you want to apply to a specific type of, I don't know, medical graduate school program, right? And they have a certain amount of hours that you need and a certain amount of, patient settings, whether it's through volunteer work or a part-time job or something like that. And you might need to accumulate some of those experiences in order to even be able to apply for that position or that graduate school program. And of course, it's important to keep those things in mind. But it's also okay to understand that not every long-term goal has to dovetail perfectly with your short-term goals. Many of you, especially if you're juniors and seniors, you're either about to graduate, you already maybe are right at the tail end of your time at university, and you're thinking to yourself, I've been here for 4 years, 5 years. I've worked really hard. I kind of need a break, right? I need to make some money. Maybe your short-term goals are different than your long-term goals in the sense that maybe you want to start that grad program or, go do that different thing, but you first kind of need to just make some money and pay off some loans. Or maybe you want to travel a little bit and you're like, hey, you know what? Actually, maybe I'll go to the Peace Corps for a year or two and see a different part of the world and get some service on my transcript, my resume, right? And have something to talk about when I'm applying to those jobs in a couple years. Or maybe I want to go work in admissions and travel up and down different part of the United States to recruit students to go to university and get to make some money, but also just have a good time and meet different people and see a different part of my nation, right? So I think you can see that short-term and long-term goals are different sometimes, and it's okay if you're thinking about them slightly differently at the time as well. And then lastly, I'm going to leave you on this thought, is just the idea that your first job isn't always perfect, and that's okay, right? I think it's, maybe a myth that first job you get out of college is, the job you're going to be in for the next 20, 30 years. Perhaps that happens for some people, but I think that's not that common, especially not anymore where, technology and the workforce, the labor market is changing all the time. We're naturally going to have different jobs and different, careers that we kind of slide in and out of. And so, that first job you get out of college might only be for a year or two, and you might just be gaining some of those really critical, transferable, hard skill sets that will then help you apply to that next job that you have or that graduate program or whatever it is that comes next for you. And you keeping in mind that a job really is not forever. Just because you're applying for a job, just because you accept a job, doesn't mean you have to be there for 5, 10 years. Like I said, it could just be for a period of time to allow you to grow, develop professionally, and leave that organization a little bit better off for having had you there working hard for them for that period of time. So those are just some recommendations from our Career Center, and just some things to kind of wrap up our thoughts as we talk about skills and how to develop those skills both in school and after we graduate. Here is our QR code. If you want to follow us, you can learn a little bit more about us and some of our upcoming events from our media posts. And then thank you. I know this is a lot of information thrown at you in a condensed period of time, and we're not in person, so it's harder to ask questions. But I would say please keep in mind that the Career Center is always here to support you. If you have questions from something that came up in this presentation or just in general, feel free to make an appointment with us. We have appointments Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. Those are our office hours. We have in-person appointments. We have virtual appointments. So we're pretty flexible there. We are also, we have drop-in hours. So maybe you just want some quick questions answered for like 10, 15 minutes. We also have virtual and in-person, hours for those drop-ins every day as well. We're located in Lassen Hall. So that is, the main student services building. We're on the first floor. We share space with academic advising. So we're that door immediately to the left of the big mural as you walk into the main student services building. And so please come visit us, take advantage of our services. We are a service that's available to you now while you're a student and also after you graduate. So we definitely work with alumni as well. So just keep that in mind. Thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.